Imagine you're at a sleepover, laughing with friends, when suddenly, a knock at the window or a strange phone call shatters the fun. What if that knock wasn't just your imagination? What if that call was more than a prank? These unsettling stories will make you think twice about your next sleepover. Sleepovers are meant to be a night of fun and friendship, but sometimes they take a terrifying twist. In this video, we're diving into 5 real-life horror tales that started as harmless sleepovers and turned into nightmares. From mysterious visitors to creepy paranormal encounters, these stories will leave you sleeping with one eye open. Story number 1. My class at the cosmetology school I attended a few years ago went on a field trip to a major beauty show in a larger city, which was around 2 hours away from our school. The newest hair and nail styles were demonstrated during the exhibition, and we witnessed professionals in the industry sharing their knowledge. I ended up sharing a room with 3 other girls when we divided into smaller groups to split hotel costs. We were all delighted to check into the hotel and unpack because it felt like a fun overnight before the big hair and fashion presentation the next day. We made the decision to head out and get some appetizers and drinks to celebrate. We strolled across the city, laughing and conversing, and before returning to the hotel for the evening, we found a pleasant place to dine and unwind. After returning to the hotel after an hour or so, we went up to our room in silence, even though it was becoming late and some of the females were a little tipsy. Since I wasn't old enough to order from the bar until almost 21, I didn't have anything to drink. About 11 o'clock at night, the phone in our hotel room started ringing while we were unwinding in the room and making plans for the next day. We were taken aback by it since, despite my frequent hotel stays, I can't recall the hotel phone ever ringing at this late hour. Confused, we all turned to face one another. I chose to respond, saying, "Hello. I can't remember every aspect of the chat because it was a few years ago, but I'll tell what I do remember. We hadn't paid for our accommodation," the man on the other end of the phone stated, and one of us had to go down to the lobby right once to pay the balance. We had all paid for the room, so we were all perplexed. When we checked in, I even got to see Molly pay with the money that we had all pooled and handed her. If we hadn't paid, the hotel wouldn't have given us the keys to our room, and calling us at 11 p.m., especially when we may be asleep, felt incredibly unprofessional. We were all perplexed and began to question whether there was a problem or if there had been an error. I informed him that we had already paid for the accommodation and that we could take care of any outstanding payments in the morning, but the man was adamant that someone needed to come down immediately because our room hadn't been paid for. If someone didn't come down and pay right away, he threatened to deny us permission to stay the night. Since I tend to be a bit nervous, I won't let any of us to walk down to the lobby that evening because it felt so weird. I strongly informed him that in the event that there was an issue, we would remain in our room until a hotel representative arrived to take us out. He became even more irate over this. He became more assertive, demanding that someone descend immediately, failing which there would be repercussions, though he did not specify what they would be. If this was indeed a hotel representative, I assumed they would either visit our room or we would handle it the next day. Confused, my classmates inquired as to what had transpired. I described what happened and told them I had a pretty horrible feeling after the call. They all concurred that we had already paid and that calling a room after 11 p.m. is not typical for a hotel front desk. No one arrived to eject us. When we went to check out the next morning, we inquired about the call from the previous evening and whether we needed to make a payment with the front desk employee. They claimed that the front desk would not have phoned us at that late hour and had no idea what we were discussing. We exchanged terrified looks and made the hasty decision to check out of the motel. We wanted to leave as quickly as possible because the entire situation was so uncomfortable. I quickly forgot about it because nothing negative occurred and we were not ejected. However, looking back, it seems pretty unsettling. Who called that person? And why on earth did they want one of us to go down to the lobby at night by ourselves? I still get shivers when I think about it. Story number 2. I was on vacation with my mother in a little New Mexico town during the summer of 1999. The evenings were calm and full of cricket sounds, while the days were heated. At 12 years old, I had a lot of attitude and always believed that I was older than I actually was. A couple of the girls who lived across the street from my mother's house were easy to become friends with. That summer, we were a group of 4 girls who thought we were better and older than everyone else, and we spent every time together. Nikki, Katie, Julie, and I were there. We were the last generation to have sleepovers, use home phones, and play outside on the trampoline until dusk. We used our Walkmans to listen to music and view movies on VHS tapes. Kids used to frequently stroll around the town at night, and we seldom ever closed the front door. We didn't have internet or cell phones. A concrete wall with a gate encircled my garden, and beyond it stretched an expansive, seemingly limitless desert. There was nothing except dirt, cacti, and little bushes strewn about on the parched earth. You could make out the faint, far-off mountains in the distance. In the center of our small town ran a bustling train track, and the main street was lined with diners, petrol stations, hotels, and a few tourist attractions. It was the kind of town where everybody knew one another, and everything seemed easy. However, the same advice from our parents was given to us. Avoid the train tracks, avoid the desert, and avoid walking down the main street at night. Did we, however, pay attention? Not at all. Thus, Julie, Nikki, and I explored the vast open areas and sporadic cacti of the desert during our days there. We would cross the railroad tracks, occasionally spotting passing trains. Then, to get to Katie's house, we would stroll down the main street past all the stores and gas stations. We were not concerned about the dangers we were advised to avoid. Instead, it felt like a grand adventure. On certain days, we would go to my place to utilize the trampoline, and on other days, we would stroll around till it got dark. However, because Katie's parents were out of town on this particular day, we arrived at her house prepared to spend the weekend there. On the first night, we had a party planned, and the girls were going to leap down a spiral staircase onto a huge beanbag. Despite the fact that I refrained from participating due to my severe fear of heights, after that, we prepared for our sleepover and chose to watch Linda Blair's original Exorcist. I was unable to sleep since it was so frightening. We told our parents that Katie's mother would take us to the cinema on the second night. However, we failed to disclose that Katie's parents were genuinely out of town, leaving us on our own. After getting our movie tickets, we all went down the main street to the tiny store, or whatever we called it, to buy junk food. We were not observing our surroundings, as much as I would want to pretend. The fact that a man followed us the entire way back to the house escaped our notice. It is important to note that Katie's parents were extremely well off. Their property was large, with numerous structures and vintage cars that her father was restoring. The kitchen, dining room, and living room were all located in a single spacious room in their home. Everything was in one large wall-free area that was surrounded by windows. One door was in the front, while the other was in the back. On the scheduled day, we got our junk food and arrived home without incident. While our pizza was baking in the oven, one of the girls decided to watch the news on TV. We learned of a report about a strange man strolling down the main street as we were eating. It just said, "Suspicious man," that's all. After a few hours, for reasons I can't fully recall, Julie rushed out of the house after hearing something that offended her. I followed her and unlocked the front door. As we sat on a seat, I listened to her gripes over the other 2 girls. Julie could feel the tension in the air as it suddenly became taut. I asked her quietly whether she felt like someone was observing us. She nodded slightly, and dazzling lights suddenly blinded us. In the driveway, a car with someone inside was illuminating us with its headlights. I got up and pushed Julie out of the place where she appeared immobilized, my heart thumping. The man made a peculiar sound, like a high-pitched squeak that abruptly transformed into a growl as we turned to go inside. Despite my trepidation, I forced myself to be brave and hurried Julie and myself inside the house. When my parents arrived, they looked over the entire place. The most unsettling aspect was the numerous scratches on the windows and doors. Katie ended up staying at Nikki's place for the remainder of the weekend, and when her parents returned home, she had a wild tale to tell them. We were careless and lied to, yet our parents didn't discipline us. I suppose being terrified for 2 hours by a lunatic was sufficient penalty. Next time you're at a sleepover and you hear something go bump in the night, remember these stories. What starts as an innocent night with friends can quickly become a real-life horror tale. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, stay safe, and sweet dreams.